Well, welcome everybody to episode 5 of When Tomorrow Comes. Nice to have you back with us. So we're joined this week by Clara Blagden and John Mumby from our urban team. Hello, guys.
Hiya. How you doing?
Hi, Ian.
Hello, John. All right?
Hi, Ian. All good? You well?
Yeah, there you are. I'm pleased to say we've got Ian Gallagher on the line from Glasgow. Hi, Ian.
Hi, Ian. How you doing? You all right?
Yeah, good to see you. And my usual partner in crime, Ashley Cook. How are you doing, Ashley?
I'm good, Ian. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Thank you very much. So I can't believe we're week 5, and I know that the shutdown is playing with my mind because I can't actually remember which episode we're on, so I did have to check. But what I do know is that this week we're talking about the future of the high street, or what I've already dubbed the death of the high street, because there's nothing like being provocative when we're talking. Ian, could I start with you, because you're someone that does lots and lots of retail work. So you have your own self-invested interest in ensuring that the high street and retail as a whole continues to be productive. How bad are things out there?
Well, as things stand, I mean, there's probably a number of retailers, as we all know, in particular the big food retailers who are probably doing better than they can ever have imagined right now. But that's obviously a bit of an extreme situation that's brought about of what's going on in the world. I mean, generally speaking, and what I'm really interested in from what I do a lot out in the discounted sector, if you take pre-corona, they were still ramping up for big expansion plans, and the idea is for most of these discounters to have a presence in most towns and even smaller than that, villages, to be honest, in some instances, north of the border anyway, and I'm pretty certain that applies to the entire UK. So
I was just going to ask you that, whether you think there is a danger of the Whitehall glitterati paint in one picture, that does that apply? You know, you just made the point. Does that apply the same in Scotland, in Wales, in Northern Ireland, in England?
Yeah, I mean, I think it does, Ian, for the reason that I take a slightly different approach on retail, and I think that the death of the high street is a fair thing to say right now. But I think retail-wise, and I'm sure we'll get into this, and others will comment on it, from the continued increase in online delivery, Amazon, etc. But the fundamentals are there's still a lot of people and a lot of shoppers that still like to visit shops to do their shopping. And I think you have to put aside what's going on right now and how we come out of this and how habits will change. The fundamentals are that certain retailers who get their products right, get their price point right, and get the way that the shopping experience right, they will continue to grow. Now, others will fall by the wayside, and that will continue to happen. But
so, John, sorry, and just to interrupt. So, John, is that the point? Do we need to just when we talk about the high street, do we need to make the distinction between retail and the type of experience that Ian described, and then high streets more broadly? Is that the point?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct, Ian. And one key point with this from my side of things, or I see it, is we need to differentiate between what we might be calling on this discussion the death of the high streets and the successful failure of the existing occupiers on the high streets. And I don't think that they can be automatically linked. We have to see an adaptation from the current occupiers. We know by going on the internet and looking at reports that the current comparison goods, especially clothes retailers, are saying that they're expecting their profits to be down anywhere between 30% and 90% over this period. But there needs to be a view that the high street will change, and it needs to be more of a leisure environment, an experience environment to those going to it, rather than the more traditional trawling around the shops on the Saturday afternoon.
So, Clara, I guess the point is none of us are going anywhere at the moment, so we are in this acute situation. But I know you're working on various town centre strategies at the moment. Has Corona changed any of your thinking on that, or is it accelerating the trend? Is that the point?
Yeah, I think it's just absolutely. I kind of echo what John said, but for it to be much more of an experience type of offer, which we have seen definitely over the last 2 to 3 years anyway, things moving to that experience offer. And it's just really important, I think, for retailers to actually be a lot more creative about what they're doing, which we've seen already. I mean, for example, John Lewis, I think their actual trade has been down by 35% in the last week or 2 weeks, but their online sales have been up by double. But it just shows actually how important their physical stores are to them, and actually online isn't always the answer. And John Lewis as well, for example, at the moment they've got their virtual, it's kind of like a virtual offer, I think, where they're doing one-to-ones with customers, where they can do interior design and helping them out with like gardening and that kind of thing. So it just shows that actually being creative can really help. And we've seen the same with all of the gym operators, with them doing like their Instagram workouts and everything. I think they just need to expand their offer.
And actually, is this about big retail now? I mean, we've got used to the behemoths of Amazon sort of dominating our shopping experience. But where do local traders, whether that's retail or other restaurateurs, other providers, fit into this?
I think there's probably a sort of a variety going on here. And I think that retailers always want to have the options and they want to have variety. So whether that is that people are still going to their big supermarkets, like Ian suggested, they are doing better than ever right now, or they're still ordering things off of Amazon. I do think that local retailers play a big part in driving people to kind of local parades or local high streets. And I think that what's going on right now, hopefully that's going to benefit those retailers. People, aren't able to travel as far to get sort of their basic necessities. So they may be depending more on local cafes who have perhaps, utilised the new PD right to convert to a kind of takeaway. Maybe they're getting their groceries from those sort of places instead. Maybe they're shopping, as you said, kind of local butchers as well. But I think that one thing that will continue is that people want to have the option. They want to be able to make a clear choice about where they buy their products from. And so I don't necessarily think, like Ian said as well, the death of the high street could be something that we're worried about, but it will continue. But it's just going to have to adapt, become more experience-based, and just make sure that people have kind of the options available.
And Ian, I mean, we've obviously seen a big fiscal stimulus package from the government with rates, holidays, and so on and so forth. I guess the irony is that perhaps some of the things that have been introduced by government have been called for by many retailers for some time. When we come out the other side, how much of that do you think might stay? Do we anticipate there being any kind of levelling up, for want of a better term, between internet providers and actual physical retailers?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and one that I was just thinking about in terms of the pace of change that's taken place in the last couple of months, and the pace that retailers sometimes do not move at to adapt. I mean, if you think about the B&Qs and Homebase, which is now obviously no more, how slow they've been to adapt from their big warehouse stores. I mean, B&Q have got still a number of 100,000 square foot stores that are no longer really fit for purpose in either pre-corona or probably post-corona world for the level of rental they're paying, the rates they're paying. Now a B&Q's ideal, as I understand it, is about 7,000 square feet for a click and collect rather than the traditional big warehouse. And I think that is the challenge, Ian. The level of rental some of these retailers are paying, the leases they're tied into, and they maybe don't have the flexibility that an Amazon in a warehouse paying a nominal kind of industrial level rental that has against retail. So that is going to be a real challenge coming out of this. And it's going to involve government intervention, I think, and how they try and address it.
And Clara, one thing I was wondering, I mean, from a more of a planning and design perspective, do we need to be designing around the kind of 9 to 5 operation when we're thinking about town centres and outer centre facilities for that matter? We're stocking great big car parks. Do we need smarter open hours and sort of more flexible retail space when we're planning for the future of our centres?
I think absolutely there needs to be more flexibility within that, and we will see that as a trend coming forward, particularly for the elderly and the vulnerable. I guess already we've seen we've got the early morning slot for them during this time through self-isolation, and I think it's inevitable that that potentially might carry on into the future for them to have that early morning slot. And then again, I guess for key workers as well, whether they're allowed maybe a morning, an hour in the morning and then an hour in the evening, or just greater flexibility for everyone so that they can fit it in with their day-to-day lifestyles. And that kind of goes hand in hand as well, I guess, with more people working from home, some people going into the office on some days, and it's just that flexibility for people that I think people will be wanting now.
Yeah, you've touched on something I was going to ask John, actually, because John, I mean, when we've thought about repositioning town centres, we've inevitably talked quite a lot about introducing office space, workspace within schemes, but then we've also had lots of feedback from people since the Corona shutdown, asking the question, do we need to be planning for as much physical office space? So how's that going to change, you know, your thinking, that the industry's thinking? John?
Thanks, Ian. It is a question that needs to be looked at. One of the issues that I think has come back for the more traditional high street at the moment is, especially in urban areas and in London, is something that the industry has grappled with at the moment and had a lot of hindsight of, is the office to resi PD, where the high streets have lost a lot of office space very quickly, which has meant that there's been a lot of daytime activity disappearing from the high street and the expenditure that comes from that. Touching on the point that I made earlier about the experience-led town centre. So I don't think that we're all going to start working from home immediately off the back of this situation. People still need to be out talking to people face to face, and people have already started providing only a percentage of their staffing capacity within office space. Iceni projects is one of those where we've done exactly the same thing. We've embraced working from home and flexible working strategies. So I don't think there is going to be a major shift from office accommodation. However, there is going to be a need to put office space and other working patterns back into town centres to create the footfall during the day. And as Clara touched on, if we are stretching the high street to the town centre day from early in the morning for gym uses, etc., through to evening and nighttime uses, that's the only way to make them successful, is to take away from the traditional 9 to 5.
Actually, one thing I'd ask for your thoughts on, I was having a chat with a planning portfolio holder, a councillor yesterday, and he said to me, I just wish that the planners and the designers we work with would design facilities that they themselves would want to live and breathe in. And I guess what I'd like you to just think of is, how do we make these future centres specific to the communities they're serving, rather than just being a homogenised, you know, checklist of things that go into a town centre, into a high street?
Yeah, I think this is quite a hard question.
Yeah, that's why I asked you it. Actually, I didn't dare ask Ian. He would have come up with a bad answer.
I mean, there's been loads of good points raised already on this video today, and I think that it does come down to a mix of things, and that's to do with making sure that the experiences that are provided in that centre relate to the people who are going to use them, that there's a mix of different uses there to mean that the town centre is going to be occupied throughout the day and into the evening. And obviously, you know, we harp on about this a lot in our sort of jobs, but, you know, making sure that we are consulting the right people about this is a big thing. And we talked about this in one of our earlier videos about how we've had to kind of change our consultation experiences because of COVID. And, you know, that is something that we still need to keep a conversation on, to make sure that those who are the most vulnerable, those who are well equipped to use the internet, are equally considered when we are planning places, to make sure that there is something for everyone and that we can have a mix of communities with a mix of different uses. It's not an easy answer, and I'm probably not giving
I appreciate that.
a straight answer here, but I think that there's so much that's going to come out of this in terms of different habits that people have and different ways of living that are going to change our approach to how we plan places, and I think that it's going to be a bit of a watch this space to see exactly how we adapt to it.
Ian, I was unkind to you there. I apologise. Is there anything you'd like to say on the subject?
Well, I thought John had his hand up, so you're better going to him first.
John, go on then. Oh, yours, John.
Yeah, I think you ignored me for a reason there, Ian. Just to follow up on Ashley's point, the key word I feel for the survival of the town centre is flexibility. We still work in a planning policy position where retail is heavily protected, town centres are heavily protected for retail purposes, and there needs to be a noted, probably central government change to how that is addressed. The high street is obviously incredibly important to a number of people, but the fact that we've all changed how we work, how we shop, how we approach consuming goods over a matter of weeks shows that a high street has to be able to adapt to that. And part of that, the question you put to Ashley, part of it might be that there is an element of trial by ever with town centres. Shops or facilities go in, they might change fairly quickly, but the second or third iteration might be the one that's the best for a population town centre.
Clara, aren't shopping centre owners pulling their hair out when they hear stuff like that? How do they make money out of running a shopping centre if they have to watch the first 2 or 3 operators fail?
Yeah, I know it's really, really tricky, and I know it's hard. It's equally as hard for landlords and for retailers, and it's really kind of in terms of who gets the help from the government as well. Obviously, a lot of retailers are asking for rent reductions from landlords, but is that actually fair for the landlords who have also got a business as well? So it's really tricky, and I don't really know what the answer is, and it's difficult for everyone. And I guess there just has to be a compromise in terms of finding a way forward that actually works for all parties.
Okay, thanks guys. Ian, I don't know whether you want to have a final word before I ask you about your artwork in the background.
Yes, certainly. I mean, I think on John and Clara's point there on the flexibility, I mean, again, the pace of change through planning policy, reacting to changing trends, retailing across the board, I'd suggest, has been too slow in a lot of cases. And you find that there are certain high streets, I take Glasgow city centre, where there's still a pretty much a moratorium against loss of retail on certain stretches of the street, which just seems to be the kind of policy that should have been in place 20 years ago. And I think ever more so, the radical side of planning that I think in Iceni we're at the forefront of, others have to be adopting, and particularly in the post-corona world, when the old rules, whatever they were, didn't apply then, they certainly won't apply when we come out of this. But maybe a little bit an art shop, maybe that's something.
Yeah, is that so? So you've been doing that in your spare time?
Yeah, I mean, I like to. It's my kind of creative. I use my left hand to do them. Just it really brings out the best in me.
Well, it's beautiful, mate. Could you send some to John, because it's a bit boring in his backdrop? John?
Exactly.
No, it really is. It is, isn't it? It's a bit bland.
I mean, it's a bit bland, John.
Yeah.
But anyway, listen, guys. Thanks for joining us this week. Inevitably, it's difficult to do justice to this subject because we could break it down into various component parts. We could have talking specifically about the future of outer centre retail, and we haven't really even touched on that. So I'm sure it's a topic that we'll come back to. But thanks for joining us today. And more importantly, thanks for everyone that's tuned in to watch. Thanks very much.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.